You know, in a post George R. R. Martin world, I have told myself I don't think I'll ever start another fantasy series that's incomplete ever again. Someday, Locke Lamora. Someday you're gonna fuck up so magnificently, so ambitiously, so overwhelmingly that the sky will light up and the moons will spin and the gods themselves will shit comets with glee. And I just hope I'm still around to see it. Hey, what's up, bookworms? It is time for the long-awaited reading and review of The Lies of Locke Lamora by Scott Lynch, the first book in his Gentleman Bastard sequence. I will not lie to you guys. I have put off for a few days doing this review for two reasons. One, I needed to let some things marinate. Two, because I was afraid of the reaction this video is going to get. And that gives me the opportunity now to tell you guys my book reviews are honest criticism. I will never, ever bullshit you guys. I will tell you how I feel. However, it is constructive criticism. It is very rarely hate. And I don't need you guys to agree with me necessarily. This is just my opinion. It's okay if we disagree. Remember, this channel is all about discussion and being able to agree to disagree. Disagreeing is perfectly fine. I feel like it's something we've got away from as a people. So I definitely think that there are going to be some things in this that true lovers of this book might not like me saying. But again, it's just an opinion. And you know what? These things change over time. Like I remember when I read the first Red Rising book and I hated it. Now it's like one of my favorite series. So you just got to take into consideration sometimes that some things, you can give them a review and the arrow can be pointing up and it can be pointing down at the time you do it. And you go back and revisit it and you think, I wish I had thought of things differently. So with that out of the way, let's talk about this book. I have put this book, off reading this book for years because of what I said in the intro there is that, yes, George R. R. Martin ruined me because while most people... a lot of people discovered the Game of Thrones and Song of Ice and Fire series after the television show. You know, they if they started reading the books, they've been waiting, a couple of years? Yeah, I started reading Game of Thrones in the year 2000. I elaborate on that here. And it's become just a point to where it's just so much frustration that that just kind of moved to a point of indifference. So I said, I will not read another fantasy series that's incomplete and or has a slow writer because of George R. R. Martin. But, I read Name of the Wind. I've been over that. I didn't read the second book. The only reason I made that exception for the Stormlight Archive is because Brandon Sanderson writes at such a fast pace that I'm not worried about it. And also, those books are so heavy that you need a little bit of a break between those books to kind of let things settle and to kind of recharge your battery, so to speak. Not that they're bad books, it's just they're exhaustive and in a good way. That is exhaustive can be a good thing, guys. And you guys know how I feel about Lord Ruler Sanderson. So the whole reason I decided to give this book a shot is one, because I have heard so much about it. I can't talk with any fantasy reader for more than, say, 30 minutes before this book starts to come up. And it's always something that had been on my radar. Like I said, I actually made a mistake. I had thought that I had read it at one point. And I still to this day don't know what book I got it confused with, that I thought I had read it years ago. But I know I had not read it, so I decided, I opened up a poll on the site and listed 4 books on my TBR list. And it actually won the poll even over Wheel of Time, which is crazy to me because Wheel of Time is really, I guess, kind of what got this channel going off the ground. So it surprised me, but I said, hey, that's what people want to hear me talk about. That's what I'm going to talk about. So this is non-spoiler, so no worries if you guys have not read it. This is not going to be a spoiler review. If it's a spoiler, it's very, very, very minor. Like I'll say something like, characters die in this book, okay? I mean, you probably know where grim darkish. I don't really know if you put this under grim dark fantasy, but grim darkish. You know where fantasy is in the 2010s at this point. You kind of know that there's going to be people that die. This is not traditional fantasy in any way. In fact, I don't know really what I classify this as. I don't know what I was expecting really, but it's almost like Victorian era fantasy, kind of like Venice, Italy kind of fantasy. I mean, that's not really pegged down a time period or anything, but you know what I mean. It really wasn't what I was expecting at all. I think I was expecting like this. I think I said that I didn't know if it was about pirates or not. I think that's because the second book, or maybe it's the third, has pirate ships on the front of it. So I guess I was kind of expecting a kind of a swashbuckling adventure story, and that's not what I got at all. And what I got was very, very different. And I will say that this book is very different from any other fantasy series I've read. It's very, very different. Some good and some bad. And I'm going to talk about a few of those things now. Let's start about what I liked about this book. The dialogue is fantastic. Okay, the interaction between the characters, terrific. You feel like if you were in that time period, obviously it isn't going to adjust to like you and your buddies talking at a bar now, but you kind of get that sense of camaraderie, of close friends, and kind of how you would have talked if you grew up in this time period together. It feels very natural. Nothing feels forced. You feel like these people are very close. They're a brotherhood. They've grown up together. You know, they care about each other. They bust each other's chops the way that, you know, guy friends will traditionally do. And you know, that's only because the way the guys are, I can't speak for all guys here, but I'll speak as a guy. If we act like completely normal around you, we probably don't like you. If we bust your chops, we call you asshole. We call you things like that. And guys, this book has a ton of bad language in it. So if some of that bad language comes through in this video, it's only because I'm channeling Scott Lynch here. A ton of bad. I mean, there's so much bad language in this. It makes First Law look PG as far as language goes, not violence. But yeah, it's a lot of bad language. And I'm not going to lie, it's kind of glorious. I kind of liked it quite a bit. So yeah, the dialogue, never have a problem with any of the dialogue in this book. I feel like the banter between the folks is great. There's one particular line where Locke's like, I can't believe you eat those things. They use the seeds of those to like poison fish. And Jean, I'm going to say Jean, guys. I don't know if it's Jean or Jean. I don't listen to the audiobook, so I'm going to say Jean. Jean replies, good for me, you know, not being a fish and all. Little things like that. I love little back and forth banter like that. So never a problem there. The twins are fantastic. I really like Bug a lot too. So dialogue and the characters are fine. There's definitely no problem there. I talked about the brotherhood between the bastards here, but specifically between Locke and Jean. I feel like that's what the real connective tissue of this story is, and it's told through mostly through flashbacks and then, you know, their present day con that they're doing. And I have to say, I've heard a lot of pushback on the flashbacks, that people have a problem with the flashbacks in this book to when they're younger. I actually think the first half of the book, the flashbacks are my favorite part. And I think it's just because I love a good origin story, especially in book number 1. So I was really liking that stuff. I love this stuff with Father Chains. Basically showing how Locke and Jean became so close. I want to know more about Sabbatha, but I'll get into that later. But yeah, it's a really believable way that they grew up together and how they became so close. And I'll talk more in the I guess you say the cons section about how this is also a problem in many aspects. But I like the flashbacks. The second half of the book, it finally flipped. I kind of felt like I really liked the flashbacks, and I felt like the setup to present day was kind of middling and boring. And I hate it when I love a book and someone uses the word boring. So I'm sorry, I just did that. Like, someone tells me Dune's boring, I like have a heart attack. And I'm like, you know, open your ears, open your eyes, you know, open your mind. So I apologize for using that word. It was very slow. It's very slow. I felt like there was a lot of I'll get to that in cons. I'm sorry. I'm getting distracted here. Then around the second half of the book, after a certain event happens, there is a singular moment where you will decide you are either in or you are out. And it's very, very obvious what that point is. And you will know it if you haven't read it yet. When you get there, and if you have read it, you know exactly what scene I'm talking about. And that's when the book completely changes. And then the flashbacks kind of feel like they're killing the narrative flow of the present day story. So it does eventually turn around there. I wish there was a more happy medium between the two. I do wish there was more Father Chains. Maybe that's why I like the flashback so much. I love Father Chains. He seems almost kind of like a a younger version, younger because he's pretty old, a younger version of Baez from the first Law trilogy, and I think that's what I like about him so much. And I love the tough love kind of way he treats them as he's raising them, and he isn't really training them to be thieves as much as he's training them, on other things. Again, I know this is non-spoiler here. So, very, very cool. Obviously, my favorite part of this book is its red wedding moment. If you don't know what a red wedding is, it's when something absolutely crazy happens and carnage happens and a lot of people die. This particular scene does take place on a ship, so I guess there's my pirates part. It's very, very good. It was very, very cool to read. To me, it almost came out of nowhere. I was not expecting it at all. Definitely the highlight of this book. I love that part so much. I went back and read it again because I felt like I was missing some stuff. Just because it was so good, not because I was like, "Wait, what happened?" No, it was just like, should I have seen this coming? And I don't think so. I think it was very, very well placed, and it was the one major point that's not where I felt like the pacing was really good by Lynch. I really, really, really liked it, and it was just a really, really fun scene. And I know it's weird to use the word "fun" when there's a bunch of people dying, but that's going to lead me to some of my cons or did not likes here. I feel like this book has a lot of structure problems, and I expect that when it's your first book as a published author and it's 600, 700 pages. I expect that there's going to be some pacing problems. I feel like all my problems in this book are with the structure. I think that the jump back between the flashbacks and the history, like where they'll be climbing a wall and then it'll give you a history of that wall, and so you have a flashback, and then you have a flashback within a flashback, and it starts to get a little convoluted. So much that makes something like Law seem normal. But I think that the structure problem really comes in it almost seems like ADD writing by Scott Lynch. And I said in one of my weekly updates that I feel like Quentin Tarantino would say, you need to get some kind of structure going with your time here because you're jumping back and forth so much. I don't even know what's going on. So there's a couple times where I had to backtrack a paragraph and be like, wait, is this actually happening or is this a memory? So these are things I feel like a really good editor could have probably fixed. But again, it doesn't break the story or anything like that. I just feel like every time it starts to take off, it goes into a history or a flashback. And it just kind of slows down the action. Every time that you're really getting into a groove, something like that happens, and it makes me want to put the book down for a little bit. So that's why it actually probably took me a little longer to read this than I usually would have read a book. So also, I've seen a lot of people bring up that he's even more ruthless than George R. R. Martin because he killed the characters, and he killed them early. The only thing I'll say about that is I feel like that's actually a negative because, while that was kind of surprising, I'm 60% into book one. I'm not super connected with these characters that if you're going to kill some of them off, I'm going to be... I felt like that should have been a book 3 thing if this was planned as a trilogy or a series as it is now. I don't know. It seemed too early for me. It was more of it should have been a, oh my God moment. It was kind of like well, that sucks. I hate that I read so much about that person when, they were just, a lamb to the slaughter, not even 2/3 into this book. So I actually kind of view that as a negative. Yes, I read Abercrombie. Yes, I read Martin. So I'm not desensitized, so to speak, to characters dying. I just feel like they mean more in those 2 series than the major character deaths did in this one. Another thing about the flashbacks I don't like in this back to the structure thing is, okay, they're doing something in present day. Now you're going to get the flashback about how they know how to do what they're about to do. So I felt like it got very Deus Ex Machina-like numerous times. It kind of reminded me of that first season of Arrow where you didn't understand how Oliver knew what to do until the last final flashback 2 minutes before the end of the episode showed you how he learned this. That can work sometimes, but every time it seemed like, okay, I'm writing my characters into a wall here. How do I get them over that wall? Oh, I'll just have a flashback that says they know how to do this. And it can work once or twice, but the entire book doing that, I wasn't a fan. I was not a fan. But mostly, I think I was super excited going into this book, and the first third of it is super duper slow. I mean, we're talking about negotiating wine prices and vineyards and stuff, and I understand you're setting up a long con here, and I'm fine with a slow burn, but it was It was too slow for me. It took me out of it a ways to where I expected. Usually a slow book, people that tell me a book has a slow start, that'll give me the energy to kind of plow through it at first. But I never heard that criticism of this book, so that actually kind of slowed me down a little bit. And I don't want to say it took the wind out of my sails, but it took the wind out of my sails. So I guess that's my biggest part. As far as this series goes, with the fact, it's kind of twofold here. The fact that he is slow going writing it, I understand. He has had a lot of personal life issues. I believe he went through a divorce. I know he suffers from depression. I suffered with depression for 40 years, so I understand. That's a story for another time. I understand you can't really even talk to somebody, much less write a story. So I understand this. But that, combined with the fact that I wasn't really super over the moon with this book, like most of the fantasy community is, that I don't know if I'm going to continue with it. At least not until either the series continues or it's complete. Because just about everyone says this book is the best and the other ones are just okay. So if that's the case, I don't know if I'm really in a hurry to continue these adventures. I feel like it wrapped up in a way where they kind of sailed off into the sunset at the end, where I could treat it as a standalone adventure. And you know what? I'm okay with some standalone adventures. Series are great. You know, once in a while, that's why I stick with Stephen King. I like some standalone adventures sometimes. Anything else? I think I have one more thing. I don't think I'm going to, like I said, at least not right now. I'm not going to continue with this. Say Thorn of Everlane does come out. I might get excited, and I might actually say, okay, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and continue. But what I always like to do on this channel is open things up to discussion. You know, this is a non-spoiler video, but there might be spoilers in the comments. And I encourage spoilers in the comments, guys, because I encourage discussion. So if you don't want to be spoiled, I'd probably stay away from the comments. If you have read it, please, let's get a discussion going. Tell me what you loved about this book. Tell me why I should continue with this series. You know, any of those things that you guys want to talk about. Again, it's always great to agree to disagree and talk about these things. Like I always say, that's how we learn from one another. So please hit me up in the comments, and I'll talk to you then.